Capitol on Wednesday, although he says that he was... Good evening. We have just confirmed that at least one BLM activist was among the people who breached the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday, although he says that he was just there sightseeing. Meanwhile, Nэнsi Pelоси and the Democrats are pushing for both impeachment and or the invocation of the 25th Amendment. They are basically blaming President Trump for everything that took place over at the Capitol. While over in New York, the Supreme Court there ruled in favor of a small gym, saying that despite the lockdowns, they can open at full capacity. Let's go through these stories together. This is your never-ending 2020 election update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Now let's begin today by talking about the aftermath of January the 6th, the protest that happened over in Washington, D.C. Now, first of all, there is a ton of speculation right now as to whether the breach of the Capitol was actually instigated by pro-Trump protesters or by subversive elements, like Antifa or BLM activists who blended into the crowd. Now, frankly, it's actually unclear who instigated the breach of the Capitol building. We're still looking into it, still reviewing all of the footage. However, there is at least one confirmed BLM activist who was part of the group that entered the U.S. Capitol. That man's name is John Sullivan, and photographs show him inside of the Capitol building on January the 6th. Now, who exactly is John Sullivan? Well, he has in the past taken to social media to advocate for armed revolution. He was arrested about 6 months ago for making threats of violence. And in the past, he organized a protest with other BLM and Antifa activists. According to the Deseret News, he has damaged vehicles and urged people to block roadways out in Utah. And this was the guy that was photographed entering the Capitol last Wednesday. Now, to give you both sides of the story, however, he has actually, since the break-in, given an interview to a TV station where he said that the reason that he was there in Washington, D.C. was not to agitate, but to better understand supporters of President Trump. He told that TV station that, for me, it's important from the group and the people around me to see that side of things, to see the truth. I don't care, like what side you're on, you should just see it raw. Now, thus far, he has not been charged with any crimes. However, 55 other people have been charged with crimes relating to the breach of the U.S. Capitol. According to the acting U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., 40 of those cases have been filed with the D.C. Superior Court, including 8 firearms-related cases, including one man who was arrested with a military semi-automatic rifle and 11 Molotov cocktails that were ready to go. So we here at the Epoch Times, we're going to keep investigating and keep looking into who these people were and who actually instigated the breach of the U.S. Capitol and see if there are any more Antifa and BLM or other subversive elements that were there and that might have organized what happened. And as we uncover more, I'll let you know right away. If you'd like to read more about the people who were charged or about this BLM activist who was among the crowd that we just talked about, those links will be in the description box below this video for you to check out for yourself. And while you're down there looking for those links, take a quick moment to smash that like button. You already know that big tech censors videos that are like this, not just on YouTube, but across all platforms. But when you smash that like button, you are forcing the YouTube algorithm, the same algorithm that censors videos like this, to share this video out to potentially thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. Alright, just as an addendum to that section, our sister media, NTD TV, was able to compile some footage as well as interviews discussing the question of whether Antifa were present during the storming of the U.S. Capitol. Take a look.
Trump supporters have largely been blamed for the violence against police officers and property, but video footage appears to show a different story. This video taken by NTD's on-the-ground reporters shows Trump supporters trying to stop the people smashing windows of the Capitol building and calling them Antifa. You can hear them saying, "Anyone who does this is not with us." It appears other protesters grab his leg and pull him down to stop him from breaking the window. Other videos show pro-Trump protesters booing those breaking in and calling them Antifa. This video appears to show them trying to stop the people smashing windows and shoving them towards the police. We do know that many genuine Trump supporters did make it inside the barricades of the Capitol building. A number of them say they didn't use violence to get in, but were let in. In this video, police appear to open the barricades. Zach Voorhees, a former Google employee turned whistleblower, recorded a video of a Trump supporter who left the rally after things turned violent. He claims he overheard a plot to make Trump supporters look bad.
They were dressed as Trump supporters, but I could tell by their conversation that they were looking to do, and I heard them say, we got to shake this up so that these people look bad. And I saw them break a window on the Capitol.
Wednesday night, Congressman Mo Brooks urged people to not rush judgment on who assaulted the Capitol building. Brooks said on Twitter that another congressman told him that intelligence suggested Antifa was going to try to infiltrate the rally by dressing like Trump supporters. One protester who was at the forefront inside the Capitol and witnessed a woman getting shot has been identified as John Sullivan. He told 2KUTV News that he didn't support President Trump, but attended the protest to document it. Sullivan is a Black Lives Matter activist and the founder of Insurgents USA. On January 1st, he urged comrades to show up to the January 6th march. He wrote on Twitter, "We need numbers to show up. No fascist in D.C. March against fascism. Spread the word, comrades. Hashtag F Trump, hashtag Antifa." He was also arrested in July for allegedly rioting and making threats of violence. In video captured by BG on the scene, he can be heard saying to other BLM activists that they need to rip Trump out of office and start a revolution.
We got rip Trump out of that office right over there. I want y'all to be after me. It's time for a revolution.
Much is still unknown about who exactly smashed the windows of the Capitol and what their intentions were. An investigation is underway. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Now, let's talk a bit more about the aftermath and the ramifications of the break-in. Now, first of all, here's a photo of the young woman that was tragically killed inside of the Capitol building. Her name is Ashley Babbitt. She was 35 years old, from California, and she was a 10-year veteran of the Air Force. According to her grandfather, she did several tours over in Afghanistan. Now, as to what actually took place surrounding her death, it's still unclear. According to the Capitol Police, she was shot by an officer whose name has yet to be revealed. There is an investigation pending, and the officer who shot Ashley has been placed on administrative leave as well as suspended. Now, other than Ashley, according to the D.C. authorities, one woman and two other men died after suffering medical emergencies during the chaos. Although as of now, we don't actually have more details about what those medical emergencies were. We don't know whether it's related to violence or maybe they were old and had some pre-existing conditions. We'll let you know as soon as we find out. Now, in terms of the police force, a U.S. Capitol police officer actually died last night when he succumbed to the injuries that he received on Wednesday inside of the Capitol. Here's a picture of him. The officer's name was Brian Sicknick, and he was a 12-year veteran of the force. According to a report that was released by the department, he was injured while physically engaging with protesters. He returned to this division office and collapsed. He was taken to a local hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. As a part of their statement, the department said that they expressed their deepest sympathies to Officer Sicknick's family and friends on their loss and mourns the loss of a friend and colleague. His death will now be investigated by the homicide branch of the department. Now, in terms of the political blowback, the chief of the U.S. Capitol Police, the sergeant at arms of the Senate, as well as the sergeant at arms of the House, all resigned after coming under very heavy pressure from Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Mitch McConnell. Now, that pressure is actually now extending to President Trump as well. Nancy Pelosi made a statement saying that Congress may move to impeach President Trump if Mike Pence and the rest of Trump's cabinet don't act to remove him using the 25th Amendment. In the statement, she said that if the vice president and the cabinet do not act, the Congress may be prepared to move forward with impeachment. It's a simple matter in terms of the Constitution. The vice president, working with the cabinet, can immediately improve the security of our country. Now, I want to mention two things here. First of all, it's not yet clear who actually instigated the breach of the Capitol building, as we discussed earlier. We're still looking into it, and who knows, it might have been subversive elements, although nothing is clear yet. And secondly, despite the blame for what happened falling on President Trump by Nancy Pelosi, as well as the Democrats, as well as members of his own cabinet, the president did urge his supporters to be both peaceful and to respect law enforcement. And it's worth noting that he did not call for any sort of violence, either in his speech or in his social media messages. Now, Mike.
Wave Hybrid was designed for people who are having more trouble getting a comfortable night's sleep. They're feeling aches and pains in their body. So we designed the Wave Hybrid to have the best support while still having the comfort and the signature feel that was associated with Casper.
A lot of people think the firmer the bed is, the more supported it is. That is not entirely true. We went about creating a model for 3 zones, for the shoulder, for the waist, and for the hips. We need to create enough separation in certain areas of the bed, specifically the waist or lower back.
To create these ergonomic features, gel pods let us pinpoint supportive areas.
And as a result, we're able to conform to the curvature of your body as much as possible and keeping your spine as aligned as possible throughout the night.
We tested all these combinations of cooling features and landed on a cooling gel that will help you avoid spikes in temperature throughout the night.
We have added perforation in the top 3 foam layers.
Even though it's really simple, it's really effective.
That helps channel the air through the air channels in our airscape so that everybody can sleep a little cooler and a little bit more comfortable.
To combat shortages due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Abyssinian Baptist Church is one of the hubs of the Texas hospital along the U.S.-Mexico also Cities border. Chris Cuomo, a CNN anchorman, has COVID-19.
Life has taken an unexpected turn. We aren't where we'd hoped to be. Some days are tougher than others. We miss the people we love. And the moments we can't share. Sometimes it's hard to smile. But we'll find a way to pull through.
Hold tight, you'll be able to see me, okay?
We'll visit our favorite places. We'll reunite with friends and family. And our light will shine again. Starting today, we'll smile and be brave. Though we're apart, our hearts have never been closer. MedTechs, safeguarding every tomorrow.
Mike Pence has not made any moves towards invoking the 25th Amendment. In fact, yesterday, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi released a joint statement saying that they placed a call to Mike Pence regarding the 25th Amendment to discuss it, but have not yet heard back from the Vice President. Now, along this line, a Democratic representative from Texas introduced articles of impeachment against President Trump in the House yesterday. So we'll have to see where all this goes. And one question that you might be asking yourself is, why are the Democrats pushing for impeachment when there are only about 12 days left in President Trump's term, technically? Well, one of the reasons, I imagine at least, is that if he is successfully impeached, then that would preclude him from running for office again. Now, President Trump has come out and condemned the violence. In a speech yesterday, he said that, like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders. America is, and must always be, a nation of law and order. So there you have it. As to what will actually happen, we'll have to wait and see in the coming weeks how this all plays out. If you'd like to read the President's full statement or any of the articles surrounding the 25th Amendment or impeachment, those links will be in the description box below this video for you to check out. Alright, just as another addendum, the news cycle seems to be moving so fast that I wanted to mention a few other things that I was not able to mention during the in-studio filming of today's episode. First of all, the National Guard is going to actually stay in Washington, D.C. through the end of January. Basically, the governor of Virginia said that he will keep the National Guard posted there at least until January the 20th, which is, of course, Inauguration Day. And he said that there will be 6,200 guardsmen in the nation's capital by this upcoming weekend. And the force will remain there until the inauguration. Also, personnel are erecting a 7-foot a 7-foot-tall, non-scalable fence around the perimeter of the U.S. Capitol. So I won't get into the irony of the Democrat mayor of Washington, D.C. erecting a wall around the Capitol to keep people out. That is too obvious. Now, in terms of the Trump cabinet, several members are resigning. Elaine Chao, the transportation secretary, has announced that she will be resigning. She is, by the way, I'll just mention, Mitch McConnell's wife, just as an aside. But she said that even though she's resigning, she will be working with Pete Buttigieg, who is the pick for Joe Biden in taking over the transportation department to help with the transition. Also, Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, also said that she is resigning, saying that, quote, "There is no mistaking the impact that President Trump's rhetoric had on the situation." Now, both of them resigned, of course, after what happened at the U.S. Capitol. However, you know, the narrative seems to be, and the opposing narrative seems to be censored, that President Trump, in his speech at the White House to the people who were at the protest, he did ask the protesters to be peaceful and patriotic, to make their voices heard. He did not ask them to be violent. And instead, he actually urged Mike Pence to send the contested Electoral College votes back to the state legislature, both of which, of course, did not happen. Now, also, the Trump campaign attorney here in Pennsylvania that was representing him in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, he resigned from the case, citing the storming of the U.S. Capitol as well. He filed a court filing, and in that he wrote that, quote, "The lawyer services were used to perpetuate a crime," meaning the storming of the U.S. Capitol, and that the lawyer himself has a fundamental disagreement with the client, which is President Trump, and so he has resigned. Now, on the other side, Senator Josh Hawley, who is, of course, the first U.S. senator to say that he was going to contest the results of the election, he is actually suing Simon & Schuster, which is a book publishing company, for canceling a contract for his book. So they canceled the contract after the storming of the U.S. Capitol, after they had already signed the contract to publish one of his books. And so Senator Hawley called the cancellation a woke mob and said that the move could not be more Orwellian. In a statement, he wrote that, quote, "Let me be clear. This is not just a contract dispute. It is a direct assault on the First Amendment. Only approved speech can now be published. This is the left looking to cancel everyone they don't approve of. I will fight this cancel culture with everything I have. We will see you in court." Now, on the other side, Simon & Schuster released a statement saying that they cannot support Senator Hawley after his role in what became a dangerous threat. And they also said that the cancellation of the contract was legal. I guess it'll be up to the court to decide. So that's the full update. And now, Roman in the studio, back to you. Now, one thing that I did not realize, because I was actually in Washington, D.C. on the ground on that day, was that protesters were actually flooding the state houses in 17 other states as well. In those states, small and mostly peaceful protests challenging the legitimacy of the 2020 election took place outside of state houses, with signs saying "Stop the Steal" and 4 more years being a common sight. Now, those other protests across the country were mostly peaceful, with only a few arrests being reported and a few scuffles being breaking out here and there, like places like Ohio and California. If you want to read more about those other protests, I'll throw those links into the description box below for you to check out for yourself. And now, before we move on from this subject, I just want to mention something a little bit, I find it interesting. After this protest, the subject of election fraud, which was already difficult to talk about because of both the censorship as well as the mainstream media narrative about it, has become almost completely taboo. Even mentioning election fraud can have you branded as an insurrectionist. And frankly, you probably will not hear anybody talking about it anymore, because even if they are talking about it, big tech will censor them outright. In fact, yesterday, after YouTube instituted their new draconian policies, at least 3 of my videos were deleted. Now, if you watch them, you know that those videos were honest, they were factual, they were properly sourced, and they were nuanced. We didn't make any definitive claims about this election, but we did just introduce new evidence for you to check out, and everything was properly linked. You can read the articles and see the data yourself. But apparently there is no more room for that in public discourse. Now, regardless, if you'd like to follow the real developments on that front, on the election fraud front, if you want uncensored news, then head on over to theepochtimes.com. We own our own servers, and so nobody can take us down. So if you'd like to know what's really going on, if you'd like to read uncensored news, then I would highly recommend that you check out theepochtimes.com. I'll throw a link to it in the description box below this video for you to check out for yourself. And now let's head on over to New York. Now, in case you don't know, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, he instituted some very heavy capacity limits for gyms that are in so-called orange micro-cluster zones, meaning that there's more cases of the virus there than in other places. Basically, in those zones right now, gyms can only operate at a 25% capacity limit. However, 2 days ago, a New York Supreme Court judge granted an injunction allowing a gym called the Athletes Unleashed to open without any capacity restrictions. Now, you might have actually heard of this gym before, this gym called Athletes Unleashed, because there was a video not so long ago which went viral.
Okay, miss, you need to leave. I want to
get out! Get out!
In that video, the owner was operating his gym as normal, basically in full capacity, and that was at a time when it was supposed to be closed, I believe. It was supposed to be fully closed. And a county health inspector came in, tried to break it up, but he couldn't. And then the owner ripped up a $15,000 fine right there on camera. So the lawyer representing this gym, he said that there was nothing that they cited that referenced how they arrived at that number, meaning 25% capacity, or how it would be justified. In fact, the tracing statistics that the state has compiled show that gyms are some of the least transmitting places in the country. So even though people are calling this injunction a win for small businesses, technically, at this moment, it only applies to that one gym, to Athletes Unleashed, meaning that other gyms in New York still must operate under the 25 capacity limit in order to operate at all. In terms of the next steps, the attorney said that there is a second part of the lawsuit that the court will hear come February, and that's going to call into question the governor's authority to have any directive last longer than 30 days without consulting the legislature. So we'll see what happens. If you want to read more about this case, the link will be in the description box below this video for you to check out for yourself. And lastly, as the restrictions on free speech get tighter and tighter, as what's allowed to be discussed on platforms like this, for instance, get more and more restricted, I hope that you continue to check back in with us, because we will, to the best of our ability for as long as we can, continue our discussion in a fact-based and well-sourced manner. So until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.
So this is coming from everywhere all of a sudden, and we're going to unpack what we know at this hour. But we do know that over the last 24 hours, Twitter specifically has banned a number of different conservative accounts, not just the president. At the same time, the Chinese Communist Party, the Ayatollah of Iran, still have their accounts because they're not a threat to the ruling party here. Tonight, a competing social media service, Parler, which we told you about, is seeing massive and unprecedented surge in traffic. The site even experienced server outage because of new users tonight. Why? A couple of reasons. Mostly this. Parler is a free speech alternative to Twitter. They don't censor you. You can say what you want. The president is on Parler, and that has drawn a lot of people who realize they are being suppressed by Twitter. Parler's succeeding. What happens now? Of course, Silicon Valley is trying to kill it. Google has just removed Parler without any warning from its App Store. Apple and Amazon, which provide services that keep services like Parler online, have also threatened to shut Parler down. Amy Peikoff is the chief policy advisor at Parler, and she joins us today. Amy, thanks so much for coming on. This seemed to come out of nowhere. How big a threat to your company is this?
I mean, this is very huge because Apple in particular carries our app on the App Store, and as far as I know, technically there's no other way to deliver it. So if they choose to withdraw their services and hosting us on their store, we're toast there. And you know, most people like our app. Our app is a very nicely functioning piece of software. And then in terms of Amazon is also raising some problems, and I'm not sure how serious that is yet because I've yet to speak with them. I will later today. And they provide server for us, and if they were to remove their services, then we'd be down. As it is, we're having some difficulties now with the uptick in traffic, but if they took their service away, we'd be gone.
I mean, there's a huge amount. It's impossible to overstate the amount of filth and political extremism, explicit violence, pornography, whatever, on the internet. That's what the internet is. But
yes,
it's Parler.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
But it's Parler that is being singled out. I mean, it's kind of impossible not to conclude this is political repression.
It really, because I think we do have the reputation as being the conservative platform, although we are nonpartisan. That is what everybody sees us as. We do see this as being politically singled out. The other thing is that we are competing with other platforms who have decided that they want to surveil the people on their platform 24/7 without any particularized suspicion. And, you know, on the one hand, people don't like to live in the world of Orwell's 1984. And then on the other hand, a lot of people seem to want to pressure social media to do more to moderate, as they call it, content on their platforms. But that would require 24-hour surveillance. And we don't think that that is consistent with the principles of America.
So just to be clear for our viewers who aren't familiar with your company and your app,
Sure.
You're just trying to provide a place for people to say what they think. You're not trying to put Amazon out of business or dethrone Apple or force anybody else's carrier to drop their service. You just want to be left alone and do your thing. Am I mischaracterizing that?
Yes. I mean, we would just like to provide a place where people can come and they can speak freely, that they're not going to be fact-checked, they're not going to be told what to think, what they can read, etc. And also, we do not data pillage. We don't data mine them. We don't turn them into commodities and try to monetize them. And so we would just like to provide that service. And of course, like everybody else, we were horrified by a lot of the incitement that was going on this week. And we are doing everything that we can within our principles to, you know, deal appropriately with that content. And we, you know, we work with law enforcement as well. But that content has been everywhere this week. This has been a very unusual week. And to be singled out, we think, is quite unfair.
Well, I mean, it's political repression, period. Now,
Definitely.
Google, when we asked why they did this, and they sent a relatively long statement, we're just going to read a snippet of it to you on the air. We're aware of continued posting in the Parler app that seeks to incite ongoing violence in the U.S. It continues. In light of this ongoing and urgent public safety threat, we're suspending the app's listings from the Play Store until it addresses these issues. Okay, so they're accusing you of inciting violence.
They are putting on us the responsibility for every piece of incitement that is posted there. And the nature of an open platform, a free and open town square, is that we do not take action on people until we are aware of a situation.
Right.
It's particularized suspicion. You do
so
not
let me just ask you really
surveil.
quick. I mean, how much of the world's kiddie porn goes through Gmail? How many Gmail accounts have been used to order plastic explosives? How many insurrections have been planned on Google? Like a lot. And so, right? I mean, this is a completely arbitrary standard applied to you because they don't like the politics of the people who use your site.
I mean, that it's looking that way. I'm hoping it's not that way, but it's looking that way, and it's coming in sooner than I would have expected it.
Yeah. Well, it's all happening at once. This Friday night. It's happening all this Friday night. We're going to look back on this night. Amy Peikoff, I appreciate your coming on tonight.
Thank you, Tucker.
So as
This is a world of incredible natural beauty, raw and hostile, one that knows no mercy, and where mistakes can have fatal consequences. Life here has always been a fight for survival. In a world where in summer the sun never sets, and in winter the nights are full of magic and color. We are exploring the most remote locations in this inhospitable terrain, from Greenland through the Northwest Passage to Alaska. We meet people who sense that their world is changing, and those who are changing it. This is a world in which the future of humanity will be decided. The Arctic. While taking risky maneuvers at full speed, Olga Barsalaizen feverishly looks for a passage through the ice.
They have coming ice.
It's a race against time.
Sea ice. So we're looking for open water.
A northeasterly wind that's unusually powerful for early July drives large amounts of drift ice from the Arctic Ocean into the fjord. The freezing headwind makes travel difficult and pushes the ice sheets closer and closer together, creating pack ice. After traveling almost 700 kilometers in the Scoresby Sound, we find ourselves stranded in the Arctic together with the Barsalaizen family in one of the most isolated and inhospitable places on Earth. A week before, we departed Iceland on a 2-hour flight over the Arctic Ocean. Our destination, Itoquatormit, a village some 800 kilometers away from its closest neighbors. The descent itself is breathtaking. On the shoreline of one of the fjord's branches, we land on a gravel runway. It was built by an American oil firm which withdrew from the development in 1990, but the runway remains. We have to continue our journey by boat, as there are no roads. The trip takes close to 2 hours. On a peaceful and beautiful July afternoon like this, who'd imagine that anything could go wrong? The colorful houses of Itoquatormit stand out like beacons between the rocks and the ice. We're overwhelmed by the incredible beauty of the Arctic, and its vastness confounds our senses. The icebergs often as tall as skyscrapers. It's more than 40 kilometers from here to the shoreline on the other side of the fjord. 350 people live in Itoquatormit. Almost all are Inuit. Most of the work they do is directly or indirectly subsidized by the Danish government, which keeps the settlement alive. There's a church, hospital, sports center, and a primary school here, along with what might be the world's most spectacular soccer pitch. Its artificial turf is carefully manicured between the rubble and the snow. They've even just opened an outdoor pool for children. It's only the second one in all of Greenland. The kids splash around to the sound of techno music. Even though the water's a little chilly, that still needs some improvement.
How warm is the water?
Around 10 degrees.
10 degrees?
Yeah, 10.
Isn't it too cold for the kids?
That's cold, but we're working on warmer.
At the small weather station, they're releasing a weather balloon, like they do every day at 11 each morning and night, at the same time as hundreds of weather stations around the world. Tora Andreasen runs the station. He's lived in Itoquatormit for 46 years, but says things have changed dramatically here in recent years.
The weather systems have changed. The temperature, the humidity, the precipitation has changed. Everything has changed. It's been a lot warmer and a lot more humid, a lot more rain in summer times. The climate we have now was what they had 1,000 kilometers south of us when I came.
Wow.
So it's quite a big change.
Above the village, there's a cemetery with a stunning view. Even if it's getting warmer here, in the summer, they still dig extra graves to be able to bury those who die in winter when the ground is frozen solid. Suddenly, there's excitement in the village.
The men are loading their guns, and everyone's on their feet. People drop everything to go and watch. The narwhals are here. Those who aren't in the boats watch from the shoreline and tell the hunters which way to go. Time and again, the whales submerge, and the boats chase after them. The sound of large caliber weapons resonates throughout the bay. The hunters fear the smell of the corpses could attract polar bears. To keep them away from the shoreline and the settlement, the dead whales are hauled onto an ice sheet and carved up there. Outside one of the cabins, we meet Meta Barsaliasi, who's following the action with binoculars. Her husband Orga and her brother Agalu are taking part in the hunt. We ask her why people here are so crazy about narwhals.
So what role does narwhal hunting play for your community?
It's very important to for our own supply for the whole year. You eat the meat and you make oil from the skin fat, and the skin you eat it. And if you are good to do handicraft, you can make jewelry from, the tooth.
Okay.
Meta invites us to stay for lunch. Goulash is on the menu. It's the children's favorite. Meta tells us that much has changed here in recent years, and asks if we'd like to join them on a boat trip up the fjord in the coming days. After 4 hours of a very cold and for us often nerve-wracking journey, we take a break in stunning surroundings. The silence is only broken by the sound of melting glaciers. While her youngest son Brian keeps an eye out for polar bears, which can appear out of nowhere at any time, we ask Meta about the biggest changes she's observed here in recent years.
The glaciers the last years have been smelting roughly, like 10 years ago, and to now it can smell up to 1 kilometer.
Then suddenly, 2 polar bears appear, a mother and her cub. A potentially extremely dangerous encounter for both parties. So it's lucky for us we're sitting safely in our boat. And lucky for the polar bears, this year's bag quota has already been reached.
I don't want to go nearby because they have very huge claws. But I like the meat. As goulash, you make small pieces of the meat, then make a goulash out of it with rice. It's very good.
Polar bear goulash. Our journey up the fjord continues. We've been traveling through this magical world of ice for 2 days. But this isn't a family holiday, even if it sometimes looks like it. 8-year-old Brian drives us to our camp for the night at full speed. Isn't Meta worried?
I was afraid when he was 5 and 6 because he's still so little, but his father wants him to learn how to drive early as possible.
And did he already shoot?
He know how to shoot him when he was 4 or 5.
As often as they can, they bring their children to the fjord to teach them how to survive here in the Arctic, how to feed themselves, how to hunt and fish, how to creep up on polar bears, seals, and muskox, and how to adapt to the ever-changing world around them.
It has been a river here, but it's all dried now. Before we can get the water here, next to the camp. So now we don't have more snow and glacier up here in the mountains, and now it's all dry. It's because it's warmer, and we have a longer summer period, and the winter season it's warmer earlier, so the snow it's already smelt.
The next morning, we need to move fast. A strong wind is coming up, and that could prove dangerous. So we need to leave. We still have a 350-kilometer return trip ahead of us. And then we find ourselves stranded in the Arctic. Meta's brother Agalu has gone on ahead, crossing the ice floes on foot, looking for a passage through the ice.
How is it? Good? Not good.
Our biggest worry now is that something could happen to the boats. They risk being destroyed by drift ice. And without the boats, there's no way to get back. We have to turn around. In an ice-free bay, we meet some hunters who are also stuck. We launch our drone to get a better overview of the situation. Agalu and the other hunters examine our images. It really doesn't look good. There's thick pack ice all the way to the horizon. We're not going to get out of here so quickly. We set up camp and post guards to watch out for polar bears. The hunters share their food with us. Meta cuts the narwhal skin and blubber into small strips to make them easier to chew.
The narwhal is good too.
Yeah, it's fresh. It's caught yesterday. The place we should have gone.
Tastes like chewing gum.
Yeah, it's very good. It's good to keep us warm now.
Yeah?
Because we are staying out. We don't know how long.
After being stuck here for 2 days, things suddenly move very quickly. The family has made a decision. Orga tells us Agalu will bring us back. The three of us, the children, and one hunter in one boat.
Okay.
Meta and Orga want the children to get back to the village. It's growing too cold out here, and the polar bears pose an ever-present danger. They plan to follow us as soon as there's a clear path through the ice. Their boat is too big to haul over the ice. It's a tiring and perilous journey back. Anyone who falls into the water here is unlikely to survive. It's hard for us to judge exactly how thick the ice really is. We drag our boat over the pack ice. All the time we're afraid that the ice could crack or that someone could slip into the icy water. We make our way from ice floe to ice floe, taking advantage of every little ice-free passage to use the boat. We drag, push, and pull, getting in and out of the boat for hours on end. This isn't normal for the middle of July. The new weather patterns are making life difficult for the Inuit. The knowledge they've acquired over many generations, which helps them predict weather conditions, is becoming unreliable.
Did it happen to you before?
No.
No.
That's first time for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Late that evening, after hours crossing the ice, we're finally in the clear. helicopter arrives to pick us up. Eric, the local policeman, has come to say goodbye and make sure we're okay. The narwhals are back in the bay, and after 2 nights on the ice, Meta has also made it home. We leave Itokotoromit deeply moved by its people and its natural beauty. The path to the landing strip is still blocked by ice. This is Yellowknife, Canada, at the military section of its airport. We're traveling with the 2nd Battalion of Quebec's Royal 22nd Regiment, a unit which supports Canada's Joint Task Force North. It's been a long trip from Itokotoromit, almost 8,000 kilometers, with stops in Quebec and Yellowknife before we reach Cambridge Bay in the Canadian Arctic. We're taking part in Operation Nanook Nanakput, its mission to patrol the Northwest Passage, Canadian territory that could hardly be more isolated. The 2 Griffin military helicopters fly low, taking advantage of the element of surprise.
You can see the vast area we have to cover up here in the north. There's thousands of miles, and slow-moving ships can't cover it all easily, so patrols like this are vital. We can keep track of what other foreign vessels are operating in Canadian waters.
The helicopters head out over the water. They have their sights set on a cargo ship and radio the freighter to identify itself. The captain is surprised. He asks why the helicopter is there. He never imagined that 2 military helicopters would suddenly appear in the middle of the night. This amuses the pilots.
We ask the question. I just wasn't too clear on it, so they may have been surprised for the close flyby that we gave them and the mild interrogation, but not unheard of for sure.
The freighter was properly registered, but the message is clear. Anyone traveling through the Northwest Passage should expect to face questions. Back at Command Central, debriefings are taking place. Reconnaissance patrols are to be transferred to observation posts in the Northwest Passage to monitor an area approximately the size of Germany.
In order to maintain our sovereignty, like during this time of the year, there's no ice, so there's a lot more boat traffic. So we want to make sure we can have people on the ground and in the air with the Air Force support to monitor any type of maritime activity. It's also for the ship that didn't say they would come to.
Russian submarine.
Yeah. There's a difference between seeing a submarine or a fishing boat, right? Right. So one of the two require different. They require a different response.
The base of their operations is known as Cam Main. Located at Cambridge Bay, it's part of the Joint Canadian-American North Warning System. Roughly 2,000 people live in Cambridge Bay. It's a kind of rough-and-tumble Arctic frontier town in the middle of nowhere that's kept alive with generous support from the Canadian government. Most of the people here live from hunting and fishing and government subsidies. Fishing for Arctic char is one of the few good-paying jobs here. People can earn around 4,000 euros for 2 weeks' work. But the fishing grounds are spread all over the Northwest Passage and are often only reachable by float plane. At the dock in Cambridge Bay, we meet some fishermen unloading their catch. We ask if they've encountered vessels in the Northwest Passage that have no business being there.
I heard stories of elders out on boats, and they see something out in the distance thinking it's an island, and all of a sudden it just submerges, disappears. So yes, out in Coppermine area.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, we know based on some site from other people that they said that those Russian they do come in Canadian Arctic. But that's all we know, and it's been in the news. So basically, I know the government of Canada, they're trying to keep it low somehow, not make a big deal out of it. But but I'm sure that they know a lot more than what they say.
At an observation post, we meet the commander of Joint Task Force North, Brigadier General Patrick Carpentier. He's inspecting his troops, who are conducting surveillance in this isolated region. He explains how hard it is to maintain a presence throughout Canada's north.
If you take that area of land, it's about the size of the continental U.S. So in that area, there's only 115,000 people that are separated in about 72 different communities. So the challenges are communication, transportation, infrastructure. Everything is a challenge in the north, and that's not counting climate.
His troops are always accompanied by a group of Arctic Rangers, local Inuit who work with the military. They play an important role.
They're critical because if you think of the Arctic, it's so big. The Rangers are really the eyes and ears and the voice of the North to give us a lot of situational awareness about what's going on in the Arctic.
The Canadian Armed Forces only have around 400 soldiers permanently stationed here in the north. So they couldn't do without the help of the Arctic Rangers and the local population. Along with 2 Arctic Rangers and a reconnaissance patrol, we're being transferred to an outpost on a small, uninhabited island. The pilots ask us if we get airsick. We're told to be honest because lots of people start to feel queasy when the helicopter picks up speed. They fly low and fast. For more than an hour, we travel over rocky terrain, as well as countless lakes. Sometimes it feels like we could reach out and touch the ground. We have to disembark quickly. The pilots need to return to base. This is to be our camp for the next few days. A couple of tents on a small island in the middle of the Arctic. There are no trees or bushes for protection. We're fully exposed to the wind and weather, which often changes from one minute to the next. Night has fallen. On slightly higher ground, the first guards have taken up position. Using infrared devices and powerful binoculars, they search for hotspots on the icy waters. These can even be detected from great distances away.
Would you see a submarine if coming? If it's up, if
it's up, we're gonna see it. If it's down, no, we don't. No. But I know that we have some specialists for submarine with us, not here, but at the other place.
But they don't show us that. The next morning, this reconnaissance patrol is searching the horizon. They've just spotted a foreign invader.
There's a grizzly bear in the area. It's right there, and when we saw it, it just came back and to come this way, so we turn around.
That's good know you guys came back.
It's hard to see, but it's right there. I can show you the picture.
Holy crap.
Watching you guys. Should say hi.
Amy and Alan load their guns. The Canadian Arctic is Inuit territory. The soldiers are guests here and unarmed. They don't want to be viewed as an occupying force, so they leave it up to the Rangers to defend them.
It's on this side. We'll come to the camp. It smells. Something unusual.
Okay. So what will you do then if he comes?
He might be like so far away up there, but
it's getting too close.
But
maybe
you went
let it down.
But for now, the bear is nowhere in sight. Suddenly, a dense fog moves in from the sea. Now it's wet and cold, around 3 degrees Celsius. Alan says it could take a week for the fog to lift. It looks like we're once again trapped in the Arctic, this time on a small island with a grizzly bear.
But when it's foggy, let's say we're completely fogged, most of the time they cannot really take off because they can barely see themselves. So if they cannot take off, they cannot land, right? So they won't take that risk.
A few days later, the skies have cleared and the helicopters can fly. The Brigadier General comes for an inspection. He and his staff have one burning question.
More bear sightings? No, we haven't seen one since day 2.
But of course, it's not bears that pose the biggest challenge here. They're merely a tactical problem.
The strategic challenge is that the North is extremely rich in resources, and the immensity is incredible. So to have a presence over such a large territory is an extreme challenge.
The Arctic boasts a wealth of natural resources: diamonds, copper, iron, oil, gas, and fish. And now the ice is melting faster and the ground is thawing. It's getting easier to extract these treasures. They're in great demand, and only those who maintain a presence here can protect their interests. It's a huge undertaking in Canada, the second largest country on Earth, and a Herculean task up here in the far north, at the end of the world. We continue our journey traveling almost 2,000 kilometers westward to Fairbanks, Alaska, and from there another 800 kilometers to Dead Horse by the Beaufort Sea. It's now early October, and we're on the Dalton Highway. Much of it is just a mix of mud and gravel. It's been called one of the world's most dangerous roads. Crossing the Yukon River, we head northwards in the Arctic, following the route of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and crossing the mighty Brooks Range, a 1,000-kilometer-long mountain range that runs right across northern Alaska. Halfway along the route, we hit Coldfoot, little more than a gas station in the middle of the wilderness. Until the mid-1990s, the Dalton Highway was closed to normal traffic. Anyone wanting to use it needed a special permit from the oil companies. Now, truck drivers tell us they're encountering more and more tourists. Most come here in winter to see the northern lights, but they often underestimate the risks.
As beautiful as it is, as nice as it is, it's not, to me, it's not worth it because it is very dangerous, you know, and especially come unprepared. Just think about, you might have to walk, 10 miles in this weather. I've helped people up here that come up here and they have nothing. They have light jackets, they have, tennis shoes, and it's just not very smart.
It's tourists.
Yeah, pretty much.
We drive further into the mountains. There's been a lot of snowfall in the last few days, unusual for early October. We stop off in Wiseman, a village that boomed during the gold rush. Everywhere, you can see relics from the days when the Dalton Highway and the Trans-Alaska Pipeline were being built in the Arctic. Just 14 people still live in Wiseman, where the freezers look like this, and it's only October. Here, everything is pretty rustic. In his cabin, Jack Riekoff is telling a group of Chinese tourists about life in the wilderness and how he shoots moose and bears in order to survive.
It's a heavy caliber 8.6 millimeter. This is what the bullet looks like when it goes. The bullet hits the animal, opens up, it's shot right through here, right through the lung. And when the bullet goes through the lung, the heart continues to pump blood to the lung, and all the blood keeps gushing out of the lung, and pretty soon the animal runs out of blood and he's dead.
Okay.
But Jack tells us the hunting's not as good as it used to be.
So anyways, I hunted 15 days. I traveled lots and I climbed a lot of mountains. I looked